So my name is Heather Disque. I am an entomologist for Forest Pest Management, and we're in the Maryland Department of Agriculture. I have a field office here in Easton. I am in charge of basically the entire eastern shore from Queen Anne's County down to the Virginia border. So hopefully we're going to go through a lot of these pests kind of quickly. If you have questions, please feel free to stop me. I have a half hour, so I have plenty of time. So first we're going to go over gypsy moth. So gypsy moth is one of our leading pests in oak-dominated forests. So here's a female gypsy moth laying an egg mass. Here's the female again with a male. The females are flightless. The males do, they obviously have wings, but they don't really fly around as much. Usually you'll see a lot of males congregating around, and this is what an egg mass looks like. They can range in size. These are quite large. They can range in size from dime size to quarter size. These are much larger than quarter, but that's the traditional sizing that we use. So gypsy moth is in our area, still active. This is what a caterpillar looks like. So a lot of times we get calls about forest tent caterpillar. So forest tent caterpillar has those like big tents, and so that's not what these look like. But the caterpillars do look similar. However, they do not have this combination of blue and red dots along the back side of their bodies. This is what immature or smaller, lower instar caterpillars will look like. They first hatch out and they're fairly small. They're these like cream to black colored larvae, and then they'll grow. When they grow larger, about in the mid to late instars is when they start to get this coloration. Pupa look like this. They're often in bark crevices. Usually a lot of our white oak species get hit a little bit harder by gypsy moth due to that cracky, curvy bark. Gypsy moth really loves to hide in there, and you'll often find pupal casings from the year before in those cracks and crevices, as well as egg masses. And this is what it looks like. This is mid-June when every leaf should be on the tree, but it looks like winter. So this was in Queen Anne's County 2 years ago. So this is basically the entire 30-acre forest was defoliated by gypsy moth. So a lot of people think that gypsy moth is something of the past, but it is very cyclical. And this is what our suppression has looked like. So in the 80s, you can see we have a lot. The suppression is in the blue, and then defoliation that we've mapped is in red. You can see through the 80s and then the early 90s, we had a lot of defoliation and a lot of resulting suppression. And then we saw a drop off. And so right now we're in this kind of cyclical. Here's the 2000s. The population came up and was knocked back down due to suppression and some other environmental factors, which I'll go over in a little bit. And then again in 2006 and 2007, we saw a steep increase in gypsy moth defoliation with resulting increases in suppression efforts. And then we've been in the kind of lull, and we started to see an increase here in 14 and 15, and then again in 16. And so in 16, this is just gypsy moth counts on the eastern shore. So we have broken down by counties. Unfortunately, Caroline County and Queen Anne's County does not participate in our cooperative survey and suppression program. So if you are a private landowner in those areas, I can always look at your trees, but we would not be adding you into our suppression program. And I always talk to the counties and make them aware of what we offer, but they've so far continued to decide to decline. So here you can see the surveys that we did, surveys on state properties, and how many were positive. And you can see here in the previous year, 11.6% of our survey sites were positive, and then in 2016, the 2015 into 2016 surveys saw a large increase. And so this resulted in, in general, gypsy moth populations are building across our area. You can see here West Virginia, and then we don't have Virginia's data, but in the same areas, we're seeing large increases in gypsy moth defoliation. And so you can see here, us in Maryland, we have some here in Dorchester, and then some here in Wicomico and Somerset counties. But we were really looking to see that these two areas would kind of combine over this past year, and it actually didn't happen because of our spring. And so the spring there was lots of rain, cooler temperatures, and that led to this gypsy moth fungus. And so I'll show you pictures of infected caterpillars and the like. But so we were really expecting to see Maryland get hammered this last year with gypsy moth defoliation, and it actually didn't happen. And the reason is because of the spring last year. So if you're looking at our spring this year, so far we have much warmer temperatures and not as much rain. And if that continues, then it'll be an increase, most likely, in gypsy moth populations. Did you have a question in the back?
I was going to ask you about the fungus.
Yep, we're getting there. Yep, no problem. And so this is what our suppression looks like. We often use helicopters. We can also use airplanes. It's by bid, so we don't actually get to choose specifically which type of aircraft we use. But this is what it looks like. We're using a biological. We're using a Bt chemical, so we're not actually spraying it's a chemical, but we're spraying a biological, so it's a soil bacteria that we're using against the gypsy moth. And so that's what comes through here. The helicopters spray, and this is where the populations we've been seeing the last couple of years are. Over here, just outside of St. Michael's, we've had suppression last year, and then the year before, down here, further closer to Bosman. So you can see, again, down here in Cambridge, and then just outside of the Wicomico, Dorchester border. And then we had a lot of gypsy moth in this sort of corridor, the interior corridor of the eastern shore. So Wicomico, Somerset, and Worcester counties both all saw significant increases in gypsy moth, which resulted in suppression. So what can homeowners do? One of the things is barrier bands. The caterpillars move up and down the tree, so they're sticky bands and they can get stopped. And there's also burlap that you can use, and this kind of just stops the caterpillar from being able to move up the tree and back to feeding. And so, and also with the burlap, a lot of times the caterpillars, when they're late instar caterpillars, they kind of get stuck underneath that burlap, and then they'll lay their egg masses there, and then you can go back and take off the burlap, and then you'll see all the egg masses, and you can just chip them right off. And then our biggest help here is this gypsy moth fungus, Entomologist. And so this fungus is best served when our springs are cool and damp. This helps the fungus to build up, and then it also helps the fungus to spread. So fungus-killed caterpillars are here on the tree. There are these caterpillars here. They kind of die in a vertical position, and so it doesn't necessarily stop the defoliation, because you can see some of these caterpillars are fairly large, but it does prevent them from creating new caterpillars for the next season. There is also a nucleo polyhedrous virus, and so this is also something that is in the environment. And so this here, you can see some of these larger caterpillars are in this downward V shape. It makes it very easy for us. So the V is for virus. When the gypsy moth caterpillar is in the vertical position, it's for the fungus. And so most of the time we see the virus really in high populations of gypsy moth caterpillars. So if you have a lot of caterpillars, you're more likely to see the virus. In low populations, we're more likely to see the fungus. And so this fungus is, right now it's dormant. It's in these resting spores. And so it actually, depending on the size of the caterpillar, it will actually go from, so when it goes from resting spores, and then in the spring, when there's these younger caterpillars that come in contact with the fungus, either in the soil or, excuse me, if it gets like blown onto them, it'll be in its active phase. And then once the caterpillars get to these larger sizes, the spores kind of understand that their life cycle is, the fungus understands its life cycle is over, so then they'll start producing these larger resting spores that will then go back into the environment. So it's kind of interesting. So a lot of times this is called like the death cloud around oak trees, this fungus, and it is because it is spread, it can be spread through wind, but also it just kind of like gets brought up in the environment and then kind of like has a fungal plume. I mean, it's not really, you can't look at it and see it's there, but it is there. So it is kind of interesting, the death cloud around oak trees. But the only problem is that the fungus cannot control large populations. And so once these caterpillars get to a large enough number, then really the only way to kind of get gypsy moth back under control is through suppression. Either, you can definitely try sticky bands, barriers, methods, but most likely chemical suppression is really the way to go. Especially, most of these oak trees can come back after 1 to 2 years of heavy defoliation, but usually after 2 years of having all of their leaves stripped off by gypsy moth, it does cause death. So any questions about gypsy moth before I move on? Okay, emerald ash borer. So this is a new one for us on the shore, not new to the state. You can see it's this kind of small metallic green beetle. We certainly have other metallic green boring beetles in the area, but this one is a little different in the way that it creates these exit holes. These are kind of D-shaped exit holes that are only emerald ash borer creates. This is what the larvae look like, and this is what they do to the tree. They create these S-shaped tunnels underneath the bark and basically shutting down the transport system for the tree. Kind of girdles it. Oops, right, there we go. This is what the outward symptoms of emerald ash borer look like. You can see there's lots of epicormic sprouting, decline. I mean, this is significant decline in tree canopy, but it does start off with slight decreases in canopy. An ash tree can live for several years with emerald ash borer before you really realize what's going on. A lot of times what happens is woodpeckers actually are the first to let us know that emerald ash borer is in the area. They'll strip the outer surface of the bark and then start kind of boring in, trying to get to these, to the larva, because as you can see, they look pretty delectable. And also another outward, initial outward sign is this bark cracking. So currently, emerald ash borer is known to be in every county that doesn't have one of these green dots. So we have them all across the western shore, and then now they've been found in Queen Anne County, in Talbot County, and in Dorchester County. So what we're doing is, we don't really get funding for this anymore, but we do have some small limited forest health funds that we use to set up emerald ash borer adult traps. So these aren't necessarily going to tell us what the size of a population is. This is just going to tell us presence or absence. And so last year we set them up in all of our non-positive counties, 2 traps per county, because that's all we had. And these all came back negative this year. So we're going to set them up in this coming season, see if we can kind of track where emerald ash borer is moving on the shore. Treatment options, I'm pretty sure, Colleen, you're going to go over this stuff. So just in general, this isn't my picture. I should take more pictures when we're treating things, because I literally have nothing. So, but this is, you can do stem injections, and there is, I think, still a homeowner drench that you can use until maybe next year. It's imidacloprid, and a lot of the neonicotinoids are being pulled for homeowner use. So a licensed pesticide applicator would still be able to use that. You would still be able to use that product, but homeowners would not. But I did leave it up there because I think there is maybe one more year of use. And my word is, so the word is that if you do not treat your trees will die. That's the way it's going to be for ash. MDA kind of helped with DNR. This was really DNR's project, and they treated a ton of trees in state park locations all across. You can see here there's one on the shore all across, and they're going to continue to do that this year. And so what we're doing, in addition to assisting with some treatments, is releasing parasitoids. So unfortunately, these are not the silver bullet, but we're hoping that they'll be able to help once we kind of get over this increase in population. And so the parasitoids that we're releasing currently are Oobius agrilli. This is an egg parasitoid. This is an emerald ash borer egg. And so these are very small. Actually, these are all small, but the egg parasitoid is definitely the smallest. And so we were just releasing parasitized eggs out into the environment, and then the eggs will hatch, the Oobius will come out, and then go and attack additional emerald ash borer eggs in the field. And so the Department of Agriculture has been releasing these parasitoids for numerous years. And the first sites were in southern Maryland, and now we've expanded to one site on the eastern shore and several sites kind of on the leading edge of. I'll show you in just a minute. Yep, it's in Caroline County. That's the egg parasitoid. We have two larval parasitoids. Detrasticus is this one here. So this one, it kind of has a smaller ovipositor, so we've been told that it's not necessarily going to be able to get through the bark of larger, more mature ash trees, but it is very effective, and it does establish well. So these are released as live adults, and there's also we get all of our parasitoids from the Emerald Ash Borer Parasitoid Program in Brighton, Michigan, and so they send us these logs that have a certain estimated amount of Tetrasticus in them, and so then we kind of nail the log to an ash tree, and so that the log is on the tree, and then the same thing as the Oobius. Once they complete their life cycle within that log, they'll emerge and then hopefully attack additional emerald ash borer. And then we also have released a small amount of Spathius. These have not really been coming to us in large amounts, and so I'm not really sure if we really had enough last year to really be able to expand or to really establish. That's the smallest numbers that we got, but you never know. So we have been releasing it. It looks like this. It has a little bit longer ovipositor than the Tetrasticus. This is also a larval parasitoid. So this is where we were releasing. There's one site out in western Maryland in Garrett County. There's an arboretum, and then several state parks here in this corridor, and then at Martinac State Park on the eastern shore. So that's where we're releasing these parasitoids. Again, it's kind of a long-term solution. It's not necessarily something that we think is going to be taking out a significant amount of emerald ash borer or to stop emerald ash borer, but it is hopefully a management tool that we'll be able to use in the future with an integrated pest management with treatments and with these parasitoids to hopefully be able to save some of our trees and manage the population in the future. So does anybody have any questions about emerald ash borer? Go ahead.
Two questions. First of all, what you showed us of the tunnels just under the bark, is that only ash borer that used to tunnel like that, or do other insects in the tunnel?
Other insects definitely make tunnels, and other insects, I'll show you, southern pine beetle also makes serpentine tunnels. But really that serpentine-esque shape is really in ash trees, is usually indicative to emerald ash borer.
And the other thing I wanted to ask is the parasitoids, is that a wasp?
They are, yep, they're, Tetracycus is a braconid wasp, and Oobius is a Eulophidae. These are not native to the U.S., no. These are ones that have come from the native range of emerald ash borer from China, and maybe one of the Spathius species is coming from a little bit further north. So no, these are not native. We do have native wasps, and some of them have been shown to attack emerald ash borer, but we don't really have culturing techniques for those. There certainly is if they would attack other species, but these 3 to 4 species have all been through significant testing by the Animal Plant Health Inspection Service. They do significant testing on any natural enemy to an invasive pest, and so they've been tested on host specificity, and so these have been shown to be very specific to emerald ash borer and not to attack our native species. Anyone else?
If you inject the ash tree with this serum or whatever, how long is that good for?
Yeah, I think Colleen will go over it, but it's the homeowner drench is only good for 1 year, and injections can last 2 to 3 years. So you would have to be treating trees, especially in our area, since we haven't really been having an increase in emerald ash borer populations. So you'd be having to treat trees for 10 to 15 years at least, maybe 20. Okay.
I have a question.
Yep.
How would you tell the difference? We have 66 actually, and I know that a couple of them have borers. So how am I going to distinguish between, say, the lilac ash borer and the emerald ash borer? Other than that D, is there any other, or is one larger, smaller?
Yeah. So emerald ash borer is smaller than the lilac borer. I mean, that D-shaped exit hole is really the one indicator. So that would be the main thing. Certainly if they're doing that epicormic sprout, I mean, ash trees have lived with lilac borer for a long time. And so really if you're starting to see that epicormic sprouts and a lot of woodpecker damage, that usually is going to lead to emerald ash borer.
Right, we don't see that.
Then, yep. Go ahead, Colleen.
I guess for the little ID cards on the back table that show EAV exit holes versus the native borer holes, you can kind of, they're true to size pictures.
Yep.
Well, not necessarily.
And I'm supposed to be done at 9:50? Okay, gotta go. All right, so so quickly, Cyrex noctilio is something we trap for. It's in Pennsylvania and it's in New York. It doesn't really affect those trees very much, so it has come off of the regulated list. However, we are trapping for it in Maryland because it's known that Cyrex noctilio likes our loblolly pines a lot better than it likes the pines up in that they have up in New York. So we are trapping for it, but it hasn't been found. So, yay! Southern pine beetle. This is sort of an introduction to Scott's talk. This here is southern pine beetle. This is a grain of rice. This is black turpentine beetle. So southern pine beetle is something that we have in our forests here on the eastern shore. Traditionally, it has not been something that causes a lot of damage, except when it gets to high populations. So this is what a fresh attack on a pine tree looks like. It's all these little popcorn tubes here. Usually if the popcorn tube crumbles really well, it's a brand new infestation. If they're a little bit more hardened, then it's an older infestation. These popcorn tubes are what the tree is doing to try to push the beetle out. It's trying to use its sap to kind of push the beetle out. And then really with southern pine beetle, it's like a death by 1,000 small beetles. So it drains the resources. Like I said, it also has these kind of serpentine galleries. You can see here, there's lots of little larvae. This is what it does. It also has a fungus attached to it. It creates these fungus lines, this blue staining in trees. I've never seen a southern pine beetle infestation without also seeing this blue staining. There is a predatory beetle, and this is important because, I mean, they do take out both the larval stage and the adult stage of southern pine beetle. And so, long story short, because I'm obviously running out of time, we trap for both southern pine beetle and the predatory beetle and use this algorithm to try to decide if the population that we're seeing and collecting of southern pine beetle is going to create damage. And so you can see in the green circles, those are all traps that caught southern pine beetle, but not in damaging population levels. I don't really think that the algorithm is working very well for us, because here you can see these are supposed to be moderate or static populations. However, we're seeing a lot of loblolly death. So southern pine beetle has been a contributing cause to the death of about 300 acres in southern Dorchester County. This is what the trees look like. They start, these are been dead longer. These are more recent dead. They kind of cause this red flagging in trees. You can see like these haven't been affected yet, and then these here have just been recently killed by a southern pine beetle. What you need to do if there is a significant southern pine beetle infestation is you do have to have some sort of cut to try to take out the leading edge of southern pine beetle. So usually a salvage cut is recommended where you take out a 50 to 100 foot buffer of uninfested trees, because these here that are those red colors that you saw in the pictures, the beetles have already moved out of them and are already attacking new trees. So you kind of want to stop the movement. And these beetles use a lot of pheromones, a lot of smells. And so you're trying to disrupt that pheromone production. And so with the disruption of pheromones, disrupts their ability to communicate with each other. And so then it kind of stops that like, hey everybody, this is a really great place to live kind of movement. And so once you can stop that movement, then you're going to protect the trees surrounding them. Again, there's like several ways to cut and leave, where you leave the trees, salvage cut, where you take the trees, pile them up and burn them. There's very limited chemical controls for southern pine beetle. It's only really for like single trees. It's not for a whole forest. The main thing is to maintain healthy stands and remove high-risk trees, because these beetles do love to congregate with each other. And so walnut twig beetle. Walnut twig beetle is currently in Cecil County. We do not have it here on the shore, but I did want to mention it. This beetle is extremely small. Like here's the penny and here's the W and the E, and it's just tiny. And so this beetle is also a carrier of a fungus. So it has 1,000 canker disease, and basically you can see like each beetle has left the tree, and with it has left a canker from the fungus that it assimilates with. So here's where we've been trapping across the state. All the sites on the shore are negative. This site here up in Cecil County is where we've been finding walnut twig beetles, not necessarily with 1,000 cankers disease, so that's kind of good. But this small area in Cecil County is quarantined for 1,000 cankers disease and walnut. So it's just, you have to talk to somebody if you want to move some trees. And hemlock woolly adelgid. We don't really have hemlocks on the shore, but I thought I'd show it because we have a couple small stands in kind of this area of the shore. Hemlock woolly adelgid is in all of our stands. So we treat on public lands And so there is a small area on Y Island that we treated for hemlock woolly adelgid. And this is kind of the environment that we're in. A lot of slopes. This is on Y Island, and then this is these are our chemical bottles that we use to hook up. And oak wilt is my last thing. We don't have it here on the shore. There is a new county, Carroll County. This is what the pressure pad looks like for oak wilt. I don't really think it's something that we need to worry about, but it does. This is what the symptoms look like. It kind of just looks like burning. But I did want to bring it up because a lot of people are having questions about it because of this new recorded positive. But it is showing up, and it's traditionally in the red oak group, but now it seems to be showing up not really in the traditional symptoms. So if you do have problems, please call somebody, a forester or one of us in the Department of Ag, and we can come out and look at your trees. And I did it. 1 minute over.